This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
With the world watching, the 45th President of the United States wins the 2024 U.S. election in convincing fashion. He will be the 47th President of the United States. Donald Trump becomes just the second American president to win terms interrupted by another, soundly defeating Kamala Harris with 277 Electoral College votes. We'll get into all the different angles today in this special episode of Real Talk. How did he do it? Where did the Harris campaign fall short? What does this say about the state of America? What does this mean for Canada? What might this mean for the rest of the world? We'll be talking to experts in Canada and the United States, including the former U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Bruce Heyman, who will join us, American author and podcaster Jared Yates Sexton, as well as some of Canada's most intuitive political scientists in the first half hour of the show. All of that coming up in just a moment. Before we get there, we want to remind you, as Remembrance Day approaches on November 11th, the Juno Beach Centre is here as Canada's second World War Museum and Cultural Centre, located in Normandy, France. And they could really use your support. At junobeach.org, you can learn more about how the centre pays homage and respects the 45,000 Canadians who lost their lives during the war, 5,500 of them killed during the Battle of Normandy, 381 on D-Day alone. The Juno Beach Center was opened in 2003 by veterans and volunteers with a vision to create a permanent memorial to all Canadians who served during the Second World War. Its mandate is to preserve this legacy for future generations through education and remembrance. We know that many of you may have looked to the Juno Beach Center as you supported them on Giving Tuesday back on November 4th, and we're asking you, if not, to consider a donation as we honor the sacrifices made by Canadian veterans through that Second World War. That's junobeach.org. Real Talk is proud to support the Juno Beach Center.
This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. And frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country. And we made history for a reason tonight, and the reason is going to be just that. We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy?
That was Donald Trump in an acceptance speech depending on where you were on the continent, either late Tuesday night or early Wednesday morning, winning in convincing fashion. We'll get to Dr. Duane Bratt, political scientist, in just a moment. The producer of this show, John Hicks, born and raised for the first part of your life in right around Miami, Florida. You've always got a keen interest in what's happening in the United States. How are you wrapping your mind around what happened last night? A lot of people were saying this thing was too close to call. Didn't wind up that way.
Well, I think you said it best about 2 shows ago. Trump is the outlier. He's the disruptor. I mean, you thought at least Kamala would cover the bases on what Biden had set up in the last election, right? At least get the same numbers. You know, feelings out there were that she may push that a little farther forward. That's not what happened. Trump made gains, and he made gains in places we never would have thought. Again, disruptor, crazy disruptor. Latino men. I mean, you've got a former president, who's saying he wants to shut down the border, remove illegals, and Latino men, his numbers went up with them. So again, you cannot you cannot predict what happens in a Trump presidency. It's just insane.
Okay, let's get to. I'm curious to know how Duane Bratt reads into this. We'll get to Dr. Melanee Thomas from the U of C right after that. Dr. Bratt, a political scientist at Calgary's Mount Royal University. Are you surprised by the outcome? How do you think Trump won in such convincing fashion? A lot of people were predicting a pretty close horse race here.
I am very surprised. I did not think that Trump was going to win the election. Obviously, it was seen as a coin flip, but I thought Harris would pull this out. But this is an overwhelming victory. He took every swing state. I mean, they're still counting in Arizona and Nevada and Michigan, but he's leading in all of those. So all of those 7 swing states Trump took, and he won the popular vote, and won the popular vote handily, 5-6 million additional votes than Kamala Harris, the first Republican since George W. Bush in 2004 to win the popular vote. So this is a much bigger victory than what he had in 2016. This is really a mandate for him, and I was surprised given what happened during the presidency, and particularly January 6th and the election denial and seizing the Capitol. Nevertheless, the voters decided that they believed that the economy was much better in the Trump years than the Biden years. And either they voted because of Trump's rhetoric about mass deportations and huge tariff walls and in insulting every possible person and the fascist trends, or they just saw that as hyperbole and, he's a businessman, so he'll get the economy going again.
It's the numbers are astounding when you look at it. In 2020, Joe Biden winning that election, 360 electoral college votes, about 51% of the popular vote, with 81 million people voting for Joe Biden in 2020, just over 74 million voting for Donald Trump. Trump wins this election with fewer votes. He wins with 71 million and change. Kamala Harris with 66 million votes. That's 15 million fewer than voted for the Democrats last election. What collapsed there? That's the question. And that's what the Democrats are going to have to look at. Was the pandemic, did that lead to a surge in voter turnout in 2020? Where did that go in 2024? We talked about the get out the vote effort of the Democrats. The Republicans really didn't have much of one. They didn't spend money on it. They downloaded it to Elon Musk and Charlie Kirk, who really didn't know what they were doing. But Trump's view is just himself and doing his rallies would be sufficient to get voter turnout. They didn't need to do the rest. So it wasn't because there was great voter turnout on the Republican side. Again, it was good. It was very good. But it was the collapse of the Democratic vote, and they stayed at home. And why did they stay at home? I think those are a lot of questions that Democratic operatives are going to be spending the time in the days, weeks, and months going forward. There's a lot of speculation about what America will look like under Donald Trump, his second term as president, and I mean a lot of people are predicting this is going to be a tough road to hoe for the press. For journalists, this is gun safety policies, sort of sensible policies, so to speak, could evaporate. This could be big opportunity for oil and gas as previously protected areas could be given access. Idaho's extreme abortion ban could go nationwide. I mean, take your pick, and I bet every pundit that we talked to today may take a different focus. But what's one area that you think Donald Trump is going to make a priority early in this presidency?
It's tariffs. It will be tariffs, and there are Canadians cheering on this vote today. There are Trump supporters. They're a minority, and there's a lot of them in Alberta, but they're going to be cheering on this. Well, we are going to be slapped in the face and kicked in the balls by this tariff policy right across the board. There's a lot of flip-flops and inconsistencies with Donald Trump's worldview over the decades. But one thing he has been absolutely consistent on is trade protection. He truly believes that tariffs put money into the Treasury and that there is no economic cost to Americans. I teach trade policy, Ryan, and I can tell you that is completely false. Just as when you put a high corporate tax, that gets floated down to consumers. And with tariffs, that also affects downstream and upstream industries. So I think that is definitely a priority. He has been consistent on that throughout the campaign. He did it during his first term, right? He pulled out of the comprehensive trade partnership with Asia Pacific. He renegotiated NAFTA. He put unilateral tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, as well as other countries. And that was all in the first term. Now he is unleashed. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that. And that could really, really hurt the Canadian economy and not, he'll accept Alberta oil and gas. I'm not convinced of that. I think we're going to be side-swapped economically. I think that's priority number one.
Well, how about this? In the Canadian capital of oil and gas, from the towers of downtown Calgary, a statement released just a very short time ago from Deborah Yedlin, who's on the show a couple of weeks ago, president and CEO of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, says Calgary's business community recognizes significant implications this Trump administration will have for Alberta and Canada. The America First agenda, which emphasizes self-reliance, deregulation, and tariffs, poses a serious challenge for Canadian businesses amid our deep economic ties. She points out $3.6 billion in goods and services cross the American border daily. Talks about navigating challenges for the energy, ag, and critical mineral sectors will include the federal and provincial governments in Canada adopting a unified Team Canada approach. She says preparing for basically NAFTA 2.0 renegotiations. She calls it the CUSMA, obviously. Streamlining regulations and enhancing trade infrastructure. Are you optimistic? I mean, Trump holds the bigger stick than Trudeau right now.
Yeah, and I will say Trudeau assembled a Team Canada approach the first time. He invited Brian Mulroney in as an advisor. He used provincial premiers from Doug Ford to Brad Wall to Rachel Notley. They worked the linkages we've already got with northern states and the access that we have to Congress. And it was a full Team Canada effort. Can you do that more than once? That's the issue. Because for Trump, a lot of this is transactional towards him. And he does not have high regard for Justin Trudeau. He recently put out a picture book where he shows a picture of Justin Trudeau and makes allusions that Trudeau is actually the biological son of Fidel Castro, right? So that's a sense of where we're getting here. But I don't think Pierre Poilievre would be in any better position. This is going to be very tough. And I think we did get through the NAFTA negotiations fairly well. We didn't give up a whole lot. We gave up the name. And that was probably the biggest thing. There was some stuff around pharmaceuticals, in greater rules of origin around the auto sector, increased wages for Mexican auto workers, which actually helped Canada. So we got through the NAFTA negotiations the first time pretty unscathed. But Carlo Dade, who's a trade expert at the Canada West Foundation, made a point in my class and said, what happens when Trump's people start to realize and they tell Trump that he didn't actually get as much as he thought in the first NAFTA renegotiation as we go through a second NAFTA renegotiation? So yes, we're going to use a Team Canada approach, but can that work successfully a second time?
Dr. Bratt, thanks for making time for us this morning. Always appreciate your perspective.
Okay, you're welcome, Ryan.
You can follow Duane Bratt on Twitter. I encourage you to do so. Great commentary through the election last night as it unrolled, and of course, generally speaking, on matters of provincial and federal politics across the country. Dr. Melanee Thomas in just a second from the University of Calgary. Jumping into our Real Talk YouTube live chat. Super Chat Ken says the reality is that the inflationary economy, while recovering, was extremely hard on people. He says combine that with social media addiction, and the Democrats were doomed. Justin says, not to mention the inevitable shit that seeps up into Canada for our elections. A lot of people are talking about what the next federal election might look like and how this could impact it. Chad is in our live chat, says, great day for Americans. Once again, democracy has determined the next leader. This is a great win for Trump. Different Ken says, never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups. Vamp says, Trump delivered a beautiful speech. It seemed like a conversation with we the people instead of a victory lap. Well,
he seemed really tired to me, but he's an old guy who's up late, but he seemed
it was like 1 a.m.
He was at the end of his rope. He was like, struggling, but he was reading the prompter, but I didn't feel inspired by it. I thought, actually,
hey,
we'll talk about it later, but that was like an SNL skit. Dana White up there.
Can I say, Dana White and Bryson DeChambeau, the golfer, but can I also say at least Trump showed up? I don't know what Kamala was doing. I want to ask our next guest what she makes of Kamala Harris just ghosting, not delivering a concession speech. Now, maybe there's something that we don't know about. I don't know. Speaking of that speech, Dr. Melanee Thomas in like 20 seconds, but here's more from Donald Trump last night.
Nobody deserves this more than him, and nobody deserves this more than his family does. This is what happens when the machine comes after you. What you've seen over the last several years, this is what it looks like. Couldn't stop him. He keeps going forward. He doesn't quit. He's the most resilient, hard-working man I've ever met in my life. His family are incredible people. This is karma, ladies and gentlemen. He deserves this. They deserve it as a family.
All right, so that was on me, Johnny. That's UFC founder Dana White, who was up on stage, one of the celebrities up on stage last night as we say good morning to Dr. Melanee Thomas, a professor of political science out of the University of Calgary. This is karma, says Dana White last night on the stage. Did you expect this? Did you see this coming? Very few people actually went on the record with predictions on this.
Because there's no social science field that's actually good at predictions, so sometimes we understand our limitations and act accordingly when it comes to that. I do teach, it's the first time I'm teaching an electoral behavior class, though, while we have these so many elections happening, because there will be 4 before the term is done provincially as well. So we have lots to talk about. My class predictions were 5-2 Trump to Harris. And and as an instructor, I will say that it's the course content, that I would like to live in a world where that course content is not. My students learned it well, and I think that they were right when they outlined the reasons that they gave for making that prediction the way that they did. It's not karma. The one thing I would point out, because I feel duty bound as a researcher who cares about democracy, is that no one's entitled to one of these offices. Like, it's not the divine right of kings. It's not karma. Like, vote choice is complicated. These processes are complicated. And we don't show them the respect they deserve when we trivialize them like that. But yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, there's like a million different angles of approach on this. We're grateful you're here. We've stacked our lineup today with folks that'll come at this from all different angles. But so Dr. Bratt there says tariffs. That's the number one thing he's looking at. But there's a million other things that people are kind of wondering what Trump will make top priority, or what the United States might look like over the next 4 years. What's an issue front of mind for you?
Well, there's a few things. I would direct folks to Jon Stewart has an excellent bit going back from 2008 about how punditry immediately following the election just spectacularly gets it wrong. Like 2008, as soon as Obama is elected, it's like post-racial America. The research is really clear, and this is one of these things where like the evidence is such that as much as I might normatively, or in terms of like my values, not want to believe it, the truth of the matter is that Barack Obama's election absolutely ignited racial animus with respect to voting. And so it is impossible to explain what went on with white voters without understanding race and racism in the United States. And the interesting thing about having 2016 and having 2020 is that we have really good data that shows that it doesn't matter when the opposing candidate is racialized themselves, that this is a feature of white America. And the thing is, for the listeners who might be like screaming at the radio or whatever right now as I'm saying it, because this is one of these things where I think people won't like it. The evidence, like this is where I come in, where when we see the kind of evidence where we see it election after election after election, that means that we have to take it into account, as much as we might not think that's true of us, and as much as we might not think that that's the way that the world should be. The other thing, because I'm a gender researcher, the sexism powers through really clearly as well. And it's a particular kind of sexism. It's specifically hostile sexism. So Donald Trump campaigning in 2016 versus Hillary Clinton, lots of the campaign rhetoric that he used appealed to the kinds of people who see power relations between women and men as zero sum. So if women are getting ahead, that means that men aren't. And in my own work, we found it amongst regular folk, where if we give them a non-political task, where we say that if they win or are competitive compared to the other regular people who were in our study, that they'll get some kind of prize. That wasn't the goal of the study. The goal of the study is when we told people that they performed poorly, and we buried who they performed poorly compared to. And there's a certain kind of man where when we tell him that he performed poorly compared to women, his hostile sexism spikes afterwards. And crucially for this, his preference for men in political leadership also spikes. And it was a non-political task. And so to kind of sum up where I'm sitting about this, vote choice is complicated. So if anybody's going to sit there and say there's a single issue or a single thing that explains it, that's wrong. I would actually go so far as to say that's empirically false, and we need to do better than that. But then I would say the things I'm taking into account, certainly economic voting. It's the reward punish, the punish side of economic voting. It always punishes the incumbent. That's always stronger than the reward, or the economy has to be so blisteringly good that you get the reward. So, I mean, so yes, that's in the mix. Partisanship is certainly in the mix, like it always is. But the story is not complete without racism and sexism. And anybody who claims otherwise is working really hard to avoid seeing what's right in front of their face, and has been right in front of their face in American elections for quite some time.
Check this out. Ian Bremmer released this breakdown, just sort of like where the votes came from and how different, demographics voted, and really interesting stuff. White men, 59% voted for Trump, 39% Harris. White women, 52% Trump, 47% Harris. Black men, 78% voted for Harris, 20% for Trump. Black women, 92% voted for Harris, 8% for Trump. And the Hispanic Latino vote, men, Trump took it 54% to 44%. That's just a breakdown that people would probably find pretty interesting. I don't know how the Harris camp wraps its mind around 15 million fewer votes than Biden secured 4 years ago. That's a whooping. And this is against, and let me just say, against the candidate, I'll read this tweet from Machine Pun Kelly. That's Kelly Scaletta on Twitter, a good follow. He was the worst president in history, and when he got voted out, he tried to stage a coup. Then he stole national secrets and sold the ones he didn't store in the bathroom. He was convicted of fraud, found liable of sexual assault, convicted of 34 felonies. He's $500 million in debt, owned by God only knows who, and the biggest national security risk the nation's ever had. But at least he's not a black woman. That from Kelly Scaletta. Over to you.
Okay, so people think that that's pithy, except that that's a pithy statement of how lots of voters actually see it.
Yeah.
And in that sense, it's a concept called status threat. There are excellent researchers that looked at this in 2016, because in coming out of 2016, the narrative was you couldn't possibly say that this was about racism or sexism. It was just about economic anxiety. And the thing is, if you think about that, in order for that to be true, it would have to look a certain kind of way. So the candidate that is pulling on people who are economically anxious, it would have a certain geographical distribution, because it would be predicated on places where they actually have, the economy is doing the worst there. It would have to have a certain kind of distribution across income categories, as in if this was really about economic anxiety, the people who were hurting the most, you'd be pulling the votes most from there. And the spoiler alert is that it's certainly, I'm not going to deny that economic anxiety and perceptions of the economy matter. Yes. But this idea that perceptions of the economy mean that you can't say that there's this element of racism and sexism in it, that means that all that other power stuff on the basis of gender and on the basis of race doesn't exist. That's the part that's not true. And what we found coming out of 2016, what the research shows really clearly, is that the kind of people who are most enthusiastic about Trump were the kind of people who are most worried about their unearned status. And you can see this on social media and stuff like this too. Like there will be, I remember one thing that came across my feed where it was two black men talking to a white man in the United States. And he actually said the part that's quiet out loud, where he says, I'm not worried about my status. I'm worried about the status of my grandchildren, because they might actually have to like compete in a meritocracy on the basis of things like race and gender. To like whether or not, and so I also want to like preemptively address things about the Harris campaign. Because in listening to media reports and questions and stuff like this, lots of it's going to be the what did Harris do wrong? And I don't think that that's a reasonable frame, actually. If you think about the way that American presidential elections usually go, you have this like, it seems endless in terms of the amount of time that's being taken, right? It seems like you've got like months and months and months of a primary campaign, and then you have months and months and months of the actual campaign itself, especially if you're a challenger. And so incumbents, we've seen in Canada and we've seen in lots of other places, incumbents are having a really hard time winning elections. And that's because people are not happy with the current status quo, certainly. But if you look at somebody like Harris, you don't get the benefit of having that kind of primary contest. The way that she became a candidate was certainly atypical. And I think the seeds were sown for that with the choice back in 2020. And it's hilarious. Coming out of 2016, like the way that people talked about that in terms of like so like when I say that the punditry like is going to miss the mark a little bit, the punditry in 2016 said the way that the Democrats have to do this is they need to get somebody who knows the party, but it's really got to be a generation younger. And like that didn't happen. As an aside, I think we need to think a little bit more carefully about age in politics, because my parents are like in their 70s, but they're not in their 80s. And would I ever, with the love and affection I have for them, put them up for this kind of level of work and this kind of office? No. And so I do think we need to talk about age bias and why younger folks really struggle to get through, because we know as soon as you start talking about somebody who's younger running, there's going to be a lot of snottiness that comes out about how dare they, what's their temerity that they think they get to come through. I don't think it's a problem that Harris bowed out and didn't make a speech when she did, because the results didn't become clear until 3 o'clock in the morning. Don't ask me why I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I went to bed when she like, by the time that she was doing that, be kind of like, we will not know. And so I may as well like get some sleep. But it was when I woke up in the middle of the night, as middle-aged people often do, that I saw. And so part of me is like, hey, that seems reasonable, because one of the things that people thought about, how do we maintain stability if this goes in a way that people are going to react really negatively to, is that we pause and we don't make assumptions without having the information about that, right? And so in that sense, I'm a bit surprised we don't have something from her yet, because I think the results are quite clear. But that initial call last night, that strikes me as non-controversial. But yeah, in summary, for the people who are screaming at me because they don't agree, it's like, I'm sorry, but the evidence is so clear. Economic anxiety or economic concerns or perceptions certainly play a role, but so too does the racism and the sexism. And any explanation that doesn't center that, regardless of who the candidates are, trying to explain American elections, misses the mark.
Melanee, thank you so much for sharing your time and perspective with us this morning. We always appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Dr. Melanee Thomas is a political scientist out of the University of Calgary. YouTube live chat. Gabe says Harris's instincts were just all wrong. Says not going to the Catholic dinner was stupid. Do you remember that Al Smith dinner for Catholic charities? Trump attended, and Kamala Harris sent a video. And obviously angered a lot of people. I can think of some examples closer to home where politicians not attending religious tied ceremonies have gotten them in a world of public controversy. Justin of Balgony says it's about time common sense prevails. Trump was talking about common sense a lot last night. Johnny, can we get that clip? The co-chair of the Harris campaign. Here he is. He was in a bit of a tough spot last night. This was Cedric Richmond announcing that Kamala Harris, the vice president, was not going to deliver a concession speech.
We still have states that have not been called yet. We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the vice president tonight, but you will hear from her tomorrow. She will be back here tomorrow to address not only the HU family, not only to address her supporters, but to address the nation. So thank you. We believe in you. May God bless you. May God keep you. And go HU and go Harris.
All right, so that's a tough one for him. Jared Yates Sexton is a political analyst, a host of the very popular Muckrake podcast, author of The Midnight Kingdom, A History of Power, Paranoia, and the Coming Crisis. Thanks for making time for us up here in Canada, Jared. Where's your head at this morning?
You know, I'm of a lot of different minds. I knew that this was a possibility. I hope that it wouldn't come to pass. I am angry. I am motivated. I am frustrated. I am demoralized. And I am also feeling more resolved than ever to continue this work and to continue opposing this.
There's a lot of people that feel that way, but right now there's probably a sense of despair because this is just the beginning. They're thinking back to 2016 when shockwaves went through not just the Hillary Clinton campaign, but across the United States. But even then, people had no idea that 4 years later, January 6th was coming. So right now, what are you saying to Democrats and organizers that are probably feeling a little bit punch drunk?
I think there are a couple of messages. First of all, I think we need to look reality in the face. There's a thing called the dark night of the soul in which you need to face reality and what has happened. I think the Democratic Party and the people who support it need to take a long look in the mirror and understand how we've arrived at this point. It includes a lot of magical thinking and delusions in terms of how politics works in this country and the nature of the United States of America in general. I also want to say to people who want to give up at this point, there is no actually giving up. You can put your head in the sand, you can escape from it or think that you are, but it will always keep coming after you. And there are millions of people who deserve your support and your solidarity and people who do not have the privilege of giving up. And so as a result, I would say lick your wounds, deal with your feelings the way that they are, and pick yourself up off the ground and figure out what you're going to do next.
People are predicting that a nationwide abortion ban could be a thing. Trump has promised mass deportations. There will probably be environmental policy implications to this. I know that folks are very concerned about rollbacks to the rights of LGBTQ2S+ citizens. What are some of the things that are on your mind, or what's something that you think realistically Trump could target early on?
Well, I think we've already been told exactly what he plans to do, which is to hand over unaccountable, unchecked power to Elon Musk over the federal budget, the possibility that we could see over $2 trillion cut, which includes aid programs, disaster relief, Social Security itself. Basically, we are seeing the dismantling of the regulatory state and federal government power, except for punitive control that is going to be handed over to his corporate donors and the billionaires who fund the GOP and the Trump campaign. Basically, what we're looking at right now is a full-out assault on liberal democracy, which is something that a lot of us, myself included, have been warning about for years now. What we could see is a worst-case scenario. It doesn't mean that's what's going to happen, but there does need to be a resistance that needs to be put forward that isn't about aesthetics, that isn't about metaphorical social media posts, whatever it is. We are actually in the middle of a full-blown crisis, and because of that, it's time for people to get serious and figure out what they're going to do.
So you've got the numbers here that astounding. We were just talking to a political scientist out of Alberta. She's looking at the Latino vote. She's looking at all these. I think Trump won in areas where people didn't expect him to win. I mean, and states too. I mean, a lot of these swing states, especially early returns. Watching the broadcast last night, it was all red. So you got people right now kind of figuring out where do you start, or what does this say about the American landscape? You got a bunch of Canadians kind of probably, to be honest, a little bit dumbfounded. I mean, check this out. It's worth nothing. I call it an unscientific, unofficial Twitter poll that I put out there, but we had about 4,000 people voting it yesterday. I asked my fellow Canadians if they had a vote, who'd it be for? 76% for Kamala. So you can understand. Now, I'll acknowledge there's other Canadians that would run similar Twitter polls that would be 100% Donald Trump, but still, you've got a nation up here, Canada, trying to figure out who are our neighbors. Maybe we didn't have the right read on the American fabric or where America's at right now. Does in your mind, it feels almost like a dumb question to ask, does the election reflect where America's at right now, or do you see it differently?
It absolutely does. And this is one of the unfortunate things that we should have learned a while ago. After 2016, a lot of people started reckoning with white supremacy, misogyny, and the racist history of the United States of America and what the fabric actually is. Instead, we retreated to these very conventional fictions about American exceptionalism and about how this is not who we are. It's absolutely who we are and who we have been since our founding. The question is what you do about it now. And the results have shown us this. People are not happy with the status quo as it exists. We knew this for a long time. The Democratic Party did not address that, much like a lot of the liberal parties around the world are not addressing that. They've actually become conservative. They have said, we will protect the status quo against the far right who wants to change it. That's not a winning argument, particularly in times of dissatisfaction. What needs to happen now is there needs to be a look in the mirror, a self-reflection period in which people decide, okay, do we actually believe in these principles, and do we actually want to fix these things, or are we interested in saving what actually remains of liberal democracy and not going any further forward than that? And history shows us when that happens, the far right racks up political victories and gains power and purchase, which is exactly what's happening. But unfortunately, this is who the United States of America is, and we are on a rightward trajectory, which I think anybody who wanted to be honest about it could see coming.
Jared Yates Sexton is a podcast host. He's an author. He's a political commentator. You can order his book, The Midnight Kingdom, A History of Power, Paranoia, and the Coming Crisis by visiting his website. I'm showing it to you right now at jysexton.com. Thanks for doing this, man. We really appreciate your perspective on this show today.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, you got it. Coming up in just 1 second, we've got Dr. Mark Crawford out of Athabasca University. Johnny, we got that clip where it's the fourth clip we have. It's Donald Trump talking about RFK Jr.
Yeah, let's do it.
Talking about different areas and who he's planning on putting in charge. Jared, we've heard about Elon Musk, but what about RFK Jr.? Here's what Trump had to say last night.
A few names like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He came in. And he's going to help make America healthy again. And now he's a great guy, and he really means it. He wants to do some things, and we're going to let him go to it. I just said, but Bobby, leave the oil to me. We have more liquid gold, oil and gas. We have more liquid gold than any country in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. We have more than Russia. Bobby, stay away from the liquid gold. Other than that, go have a good time, Bobby.
All right, so that's Donald Trump. That probably doesn't fare well for Canadian oil and gas producers. Dr. Mark Crawford, professor of political science at Athabasca University, joining us this morning. It's the morning after the U.S. election. Dr. Crawford, good morning to you. Thank you for making time for us. Were you surprised by the outcome? Are you surprised by Trump's big win?
Yes. Yes, I was surprised. Now, you could argue that maybe we shouldn't have been surprised because after all, the New York Times Siena poll, the aggregate of polls said, look, it's 49% to 49%. It's all within the range of statistical error. And therefore, we shouldn't be surprised that Trump got, 50.89 or 50.1% of the vote. On the other hand, all of the momentum in the last couple of weeks of the campaign seemed to be going Harris's way, not only because she had been performing well in rallies and on getting big rallies and performing well on television, and but the polls were suggesting, or at least some of the polls that were brought to our attention were suggesting that some of the first of all, that there was a much higher female turnout than male turnout, which people assumed meant that the polls would exaggerate Trump's support rather than supporting the Democrat support as historically it had always done. Historically, you would expect the Democrats to win the popular vote and then the Republicans to maybe squeak a victory in through the Electoral College. But this time, he even seemed to get a very, very small minority or very, very small margin of the majority vote. So, um, the other reason I was surprised is that several well-known commentators, Michael Moore, James Carville, Alan Lichtman, a pollster named Ann Seltzer, who's sort of the Janet Brown of Iowa, they all said that, I think Kamala's going to do it, and so I just deferred to their greater familiarity with events and kind of thought that the Democrats were going to squeak this one out. But
Yeah.
that didn't happen.
It was like everybody we talked to is going, yeah, it's too close to call. It's too close to call. It wasn't close at all. It didn't feel close. And I don't want to take away from they're still counting votes and this, that, and the other. But like from start to finish last night, everything was red. People are talking about the implications for the U.S., and it remains to be seen. And there's a lot to talk about. I want to talk to you about Canada and the rest of the world. In particular, why don't we start like NATO? I mean, Trump's been big on getting countries to contribute more to NATO. He's talked about his relationship with Vladimir Putin. I wonder what this means for Zelensky and Ukraine, for the Middle East. Where do we start? Why don't we start with NATO? What do you expect?
Well, of course, he kind of presided over a weakening of NATO when he was president. Expressed his ambivalence about the future relevance of the alliance. I think that the pressure on countries, particularly Canada, to contribute more militarily, financially to NATO will be great because they've got to. They're afraid that Trump will withhold support for the organization. So now, I think many of the European members were already stepping up and moving towards that that 2% of GDP goal. So yeah, I mean, I don't expect the alliance to fall apart, but I do expect them to be a bit worried, and of course the mood in Ukraine must be very somber this morning.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that means. What do you think? Trump's talked about. He says last night. I don't have the clip handy, but he talks about they said I was going to start wars. They said I was going to start wars. He said aside from taking down ISIS, I didn't start wars. I end wars. He's basically said he figures he can end the conflict in the Middle East in a week. Was what he promised on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
What do you expect to see there, if anything?
No, there won't be a great immediate success like that, but there's a small grain of truth, perhaps, in what Trump is saying, in the sense that the international order has been marked by a commitment to the rule of law and commitment to treaty, and not a sort of pre-World War II kind of balance of power, sort of where ethno-political states have wars and the stronger ones win and the weaker ones lose. In the sense he could help, there could be a more rapid peace in the sense that Ukraine could be prevailed upon to accept that it's lost its eastern territories. That the 20% of its land that serves as a corridor between Crimea and Russia. I think Ukraine quite rightly said, look, we signed treaties with Putin's mentor, Boris Yeltsin, guaranteeing the sovereignty of this country, and under international law, we deserve all of it back. Trump, who is no great believer in international law, who believes in strong men, nation states, basically providing security in the international order. He wouldn't, he didn't even commit during the debate, in the presidential debate with Kamala Harris, that he was on Ukraine's side and wanted Ukraine to win. And he of course gave several instances of an expression of affinity or friendship with Boris Yeltsin,
with Putin,
even siding with Yeltsin over his own intelligence about what was happening in Eastern Europe. So, is he going to solve the Ukrainian war overnight? No, but I mean, there could be a kind of a kind of bad peace in the sense that Ukraine might be forced to accept that it's losing the Donbass.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I can't imagine how this is good for Ukraine in the least. We're going to continue this conversation with you, former U.S. Ambassador to Canada. I think it's going to be curious to see.
Yeah.
Dr. Crawford, we've been running the gamut here. We appreciate you joining us this morning. Thanks for making time for us.
Okay.
You got it.
Yeah.
That's Dr. Mark Crawford, a political scientist at Athabasca University. Coming up in just a second, Bruce Heyman, former U.S. ambassador to Canada. I wanted to ask him what he thinks about that, Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin, Trump's relationship or lack of relationship with Zelensky. Not more importantly, on a different line, for this Canadian audience, what does this mean for Canada? We're going to talk to a guy that has been inside that relationship in one of the highest profile positions coming up in 60 seconds. Many of the appearances on this program are made possible today by our friends at Athabasca University, including that political science program. Canada's Open University has a myriad of programs and courses with a guaranteed fit for you. They're world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. You can open your options with the online offerings at Athabasca University, and the tale of the tape is incredible. More than 92% of AU alumni say that they're working in a job related to their field of study. There's not a lot of post-secondaries that can claim that. You can learn more about how AU works, its programs and courses, and student supports by visiting athabascau.ca. At California Closets, they have nailed custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. That includes boot rooms. It could be entertainment centers. It might be that staircase with some extra space for some maybe family photos. Whatever you can dream up, they can do it. That could be your dream closet. It could be the storage room. It could be the garage. It all starts with a free design consultation where you can learn more about their approach. You can book that today at californiaclosets.ca. And our friends at Friesen Brothers want to remind you every month, the first of the month, they've got 15% off all grocery purchases of $75 or more. And the Friesen Brothers Butcher Shop only sells fresh Alberta meat, whether it's beef, pork, chicken, or turkey. Also, every Friesen Brothers Butcher Shop has a well-trained butcher who's happy to custom cut your choice of meat for your favorite thickness, or share their own great grilling tips. Plus, if you need a specific cut for a special occasion, they can help with that too. You can find out more information by visiting the Butcher Shop link at friesen.com.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together. We're going to fulfill that mission. The task before us will not be easy, but I will bring every ounce of energy, spirit, and fight that I have in my soul to the job that you've entrusted to me. This is a great job. There's no job like this. This is the most important job in the world. Just as I did in my first term, we had a great first term, a great first term. I will govern by a simple motto: promises made, promises kept. We're going to keep our promises. Nothing will stop me from keeping my word to you, the people. We will make America safe, strong, prosperous, powerful, and free again. And I'm asking every citizen all across our land to join me in this noble and righteous endeavor. That's what it is. It's time to put the divisions of the past 4 years behind us. It's time to unite. And we're going to try. We have to try. And it's going to happen. Success will bring us together. I've seen that. I saw that in the first term when we became more and more successful. People started coming together. Success is going to bring us together, and we are going to start by all putting America first. We have to put our country first.
All right, America first. What does that mean for Canada? Ambassador Bruce Heyman served President Barack Obama as the U.S. ambassador to Canada from 2014 to 2017, has always been generous with his Real Talk appearances. Welcome back. What a result last night. Were you taken aback? Were you expecting a closer race?
I was expecting a much closer race. While I knew that one of the potential outcomes clearly was that Donald Trump could win, I did not believe that it would be as broad based and sweeping as it turned out, and losing so much in terms of the Senate. The House is on a teetering right now, and the presidency, he captured so many of those battleground states that, I did not anticipate it to be this extreme. That being said, if we're going to lose, I'd rather in some ways lose this way than be battling in the courts and debating and fighting every day as to what ballot counted and what didn't. And, in some ways, having a clear, decisive outcome enables us to move ahead.
This America First, approach is nothing new for Donald Trump. It obviously defined his first term as president, and I think made life difficult for Canadian industries. Obviously, I could list a ton, but the auto industry, oil and gas, ag, steel, lumber. What are you expecting? I mean, you've obviously worked hard on that relationship between the United States and Canada. What should Canadians be bracing for?
Well, I think more of the same of what you saw in the first term, you should expect in the second term, and then on steroids. I mean, he has specifically laid out his vision and plan with regard to how he's dealing with outside relationships. And I say outside relationships are allies and adversaries around the world. He's very clear on that. The question at hand is, how is he going to impose tariffs? He's going to do it. There's no doubt in my mind. So will our NAFTA, CUSMCA, USMCA neighbors be exempt? Will some portions of Canadian trade with us be exempt, oil and gas, for example, or anything else? Or will he just tariff everybody, and then you're going to have to negotiate your way out of it? It wouldn't surprise me if he starts with a blanket tariff and then provides exceptions. He uses it a means to exert, outcomes, especially with Mexico and the border, and say, guys, here's the tariffs. Here's what it's going to look like. This is what you have to do for me. Very transactional, very transactional.
Ambassador, do you think, I've seen some people suggesting that, the history should indicate that tariffs could also hurt Americans. You've obviously had a long and successful career in business.
Yeah.
Is that something that maybe the American public is underestimating as they cheer more for this approach?
I think they are underestimating it. You just don't realize it. I mean, he has this strange belief that the countries or the foreign companies are going to pay it all, and the American, consumer doesn't pay for it. I think it's a bit naive in that respect. That being said, we don't import so much, especially when you take out China, for example, which I think he's going to go very aggressive on. Leaving China aside, and you look at the size of our economy and the amount we import, while it's a lot for Canada to sell to us, in terms of the size of our economy, this isn't that large. And so I am anticipating it having less effect actually domestically than people think.
What do you make of? I asked our previous guest, Dr. Crawford, out of Athabasca University, about the obviously the Russia's aggression in Ukraine, obviously what's happening in the Middle East, and then of course NATO as well. I'd love to tick all three boxes with you, starting with Trump's relationship with Putin. Obviously approaches Russia very differently than President Biden has. What are you expecting to see there in that war?
Well, he's very specifically said he's going to solve the problem in 24 hours.
Right.
So I'm really looking forward to that. I wish him much luck in that, but I don't want it to happen at the expense of Ukraine and the expense of safety of Europe. I think what is going to end up happening is, as the U.S. pulls back from its support of Ukraine under a Trump administration, a lot of pressure is going to be on Europe to, build up militarily. And then by extension, the pressure will be on Canada, both in terms of meeting your NATO target numbers, which will come into play much earlier than the date set by the Prime Minister, but also, hey, Canada, you got to help pay more for this effort in Ukraine since the U.S. is stepping away. I think that pressure is going to be significant there. But let's see if he can pull that off.
What do you expect to see in Gaza? Trump's negotiations or relationship in Israel with Netanyahu? This is obviously something that the world has watched in horror. Trump has basically said that he's confident that he can end that as well. Are you optimistic?
I think he's going to go to Netanyahu and say, do what you need to do, but get it done quickly. So I think that pressure, though, Gaza is almost secondary at this point to what may happen with Iran. And that could happen like imminently, like literally within days. And it wouldn't surprise me to see a test of the Biden remaining days in his administration. And that test could be significant because Iran said they're going to retaliate, and then Israel might preemptively strike. So this is a very hot area, and it could inflame very soon.
Yeah, I know. I don't have to tell you that the minute that you invoke Iran in this conversation, people start thinking about nuclear weapons. I mean, that's obviously something. And then all of a sudden you start thinking Iranian leadership and Donald Trump are going to have their fingers over the red buttons. I think that's something that the entire world gets a little bit nervous about.
I personally am nervous about Donald Trump having his finger on any button, but that's a whole different subject. I mean, I think in reality, Iran is a bad actor. We know that. They foment terrorism, around the world, and they've tried to interfere even with us in the United States. They are deeply aligned with Russia and North Korea, and this is a collection of bad folks in the neighborhood. They are fomenting terror operations throughout the Middle East and putting U.S. soldiers in jeopardy in a large portion of that, and trade with the Houthis shooting missiles at ships going by. So, we've got a real problem here. Israel has a problem, but we do too. And what happens next is will be very telling as to how the remaining of this administration plays this, and then the new administration.
Ambassador, I'm not asking you to make a prediction on the outcome of the Canadian election that is probably a year from now, but it's obviously fascinating developments. I don't have to tell you that Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is polling very high right now. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, obviously Liberal leader, is struggling in the polls. You saw two Prime Ministers in action, worked with two of them, the Conservative Stephen Harper, the Liberal Justin Trudeau, early in his tenure. Just a comment, if you will, in closing on the dynamic between Trump and Canada, maybe outside trade, which you've already commented on, and what you think a Canadian Prime Minister will have to bring to the table to effectively support his own country's interests in negotiating with somebody like Donald Trump. There's really nobody else like him.
Donald Trump is very transactional and very transparent in many ways. I mean, it's almost no hidden agenda. He tells you what he wants from you, and he tries to impose his will to try to get what he wants. And so the issue will be in this next set of, I think, negotiations that Canada will inevitably be in with regard to tariffs and USMCA or CUSMCA and defense spending and all of the things that are going to be there. I think the Trump team is going to play this differently with Canada than Canada's used to with the United States. What Canada's used to historically is we make a suggestion, they respond. We make another suggestion, they respond, and we go back and forth. And there's a bit of a drag this out approach to negotiations between the two of us. I think Trump's just going to execute, make decisions, click the button, do it. And then Canada's going to have to be in a place of trying to negotiate, how to unwind some parts of this, whether it's tariffs or anything else. So I think it's going to be a real challenge regardless of who's prime minister. Look, there might be people who believe, wouldn't it be better if we had X or Y? I would just say, I think that what you're going to face is very near term. And I think it could be the first 100 days of this administration could make a lot of decisions that could impact Canada very quickly.
Bruce Heyman is the former U.S. ambassador to Canada and a wonderful friend to this show. Thank you for making time for us, Ambassador. We appreciate it.
Pleasure being with you as always.
You bet. You can let us know what you think about what you heard from Ambassador Heyman, from our panel of political scientists, from Jared Yates Sexton as well, to talk at RyanJespersen.com. We've been getting emails through the morning. I want to read one from Mike in Calgary just a moment. Plus, pop into our Real Talk live chat on YouTube, which is humming this morning. Before we do, though, I want to take a break out of the election cycle as we do weekly, presented by our friends.
Thank you.
Ready for like just a 2-minute reprieve here?
So last night, I'll just throw this in before you say this. Last night, I big props to MSNBC, CNN, even Fox News. They had breaks. So they had the Calm app come on.
I saw
or
that.
They would show like drone footage of Thailand, and then they would give you facts about European countries and forestry, and it was just perfect. It cut right through the tension with a knife. It was like,
They're not paying us, but we will recognize the Calm app did some of the most effective marketing I've ever seen last night. I thought my TV had cut out. I was in the other room just doing dishes, and I popped in to see why it was silent.
Piano.
And it was like Calm app is presenting these 30 seconds of silence, and then my own brain. You ever like you like my own brain, I guess, was trying to make me laugh this morning as I was walking out. I step out of the front door of our house to go to my car to come into work today. And I don't know why, but all of a sudden I hear Annie in my head. The sun will come out tomorrow. And I'm going, okay. And I kind of had a little smirk as I walk into my car this morning. We're going to get to the live chat in a sec. We're going to get to your emails. There's nobody that doesn't know yet that Donald Trump won the election, but we're bringing you comprehensive coverage on a special episode of Real Talk. MyJasper Memories, presented weekly on Real Talk by our friends at Tourism Jasper. And we've got something really exciting to tell you about here. Explorers are making whiskey for explorers at the brand new Maligne Range. This is absolutely amazing. You can check out the MalineRange.com. We'll link to it in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube. This is Jasper's first whiskey distillery. Absolutely amazing food, by the way. Everybody's raving about this menu of theirs. They've got lunch, dinner menu as well that you can check out. It's going to be perfect for après-ski this winter. They just opened September 19th. Johnny, you know when they were supposed to open? This was so cruel for them. The night that Jasper was evacuated was the night they were supposed to open. And so now, thank goodness, this stunning structure survived, and they're now open for business. It's a new elevated dining experience in Jasper, a celebration of Canadian whiskey culture, offering guests an immersive and refined atmosphere, exceptional cuisine. I can't wait to get out there. I'm just taking a look here, like smoked pork belly bites, black garlic truffle fries, smoked cashews. Are you kidding me? Beef cheek croquettes, bison carpaccio. I'm just reading through the menu. Mouth-watering. Amazing. A surf and turf platter, beef brisket, West Coast salmon. Oh, they got huge sausages out there. Love to see that. You can experience these expertly crafted whiskey cocktails, curated selections of wine, beer, other beverages. The experience will reflect the natural beauty and rich heritage of Jasper. Look at those bottles you were just showing us. Absolutely stunning. I love it. I can't wait to get one into our bar here at Real Talk. The MalineRange.com is where you can learn more. You can view their menu, of course, make a reservation as well. And you can always find out more by visiting jasper.travel. Tell us about your Jasper memories. We'd love to feature it in an upcoming segment presented by our friends at Tourism Jasper. Pseudoscientist in our YouTube live chat wonders, why were the polls so very wrong? I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on what poll you were looking at, but I felt like a lot of people's gut instincts were off on this too. And then I understand why people were nervous to make predictions.
Sure.
But it just like watching last night, it was the same. I was taken back 8 years ago to a watch party I was at when it was Hillary v. Donald. Both of them would have been first-term presidents. Mm-hmm. He would have been kind of like the second major celebrity to be an American president, probably behind Ronald Reagan. She would have been the first woman, and it was one of those things where it just wasn't close right out of the gates.
Yeah.
Stephanie in our chat says women and minority rights will start tanking in Canada because of the hard right here. Just seeing an important win. I see a lot of people claiming this as a win for Canadian conservatives. But Ken says, even in Alberta, if you think any additional dollars from Keystone are going to be higher than all your other costs due to tariffs, you're dreaming.
Yeah.
I don't know if Keystone's getting resurrected, but I wouldn't rule anything out. Akat, by the way, says that heard James Carville referenced earlier, says Carville hasn't been relevant for like 25 years. Carville was relevant in the Bill Clinton years for sure. Tracy says, explain to me how the numbers worked out this way when Harris had it seemed like 10 times the number of people at her events. Tracy says something stinks. I think what stinks is that they didn't get out the vote. I mean, the numbers don't lie. I mean, I don't know how you look at this. Joe Biden in 2020, 81 million votes. His vice president, Kamala Harris, 4 years later, 15 million fewer votes. 15 million fewer.
Yeah, I have to agree with our first guest. I just think, and I hate to say it, but I don't think America's ready for a female leader yet. That's just how it is. Because if you wanted to pick a leader who had the best credentials, there's no one right now better than Kamala Harris. I mean, she's better than Hillary Clinton. She served in 3 different branches of government. She's been VP, lead prosecutor. She's been in the House. She's represented every level. She's a lawyer. She absolutely, we know this now, whooped Trump's ass in the debate, okay? Like, didn't even want to come back and speak with her again or do a second
Well, although
one. But like, so, if Black, Asian, the first woman to be all those things and Black and Asian, I don't see any other candidate who's female anywhere on the left or the right who is more qualified to perhaps step up and take the White House. So I just think, I think there's men in America who just still don't think a female could hold the office as well as a man who maybe you're choosing a lesser of two evils. But the other thing, the Latino vote. I want to go back to it again. Increased. That just amazes me. So
do you think that's because I don't remember the name of the comedian? Who was the comedian? But like the guy that made the
Tony
joke,
Hinchcliffe
made the joke about the floating island of garbage, Puerto Rico. Trump didn't say it.
No,
right?
he didn't. And
I
he distanced himself
everybody
pretty quick
kind of looked at it and went like, "Oh, Trump just lost the Latino vote, or Trump just lost the election."
Well, he didn't at all.
But I'm sitting there going like, "Well, number one, he's not the one that made the joke."
That's
I don't know.
true. Yeah.
It obviously didn't factor in. We got this email from Mike in Calgary. Mike says, "Real talk. I haven't written in a while, but I needed to today." He's feeling like it's cathartic. That's good. Says this morning, we all woke up to the reality of a second Trump term, not only winning the Electoral College, but the popular vote as well. His party also won the Senate, controls the Supreme Court, and it's looking like Republicans will control Congress as well. If this is the reality, Trump will be the most powerful president in American history. There are no safeguards for the next 4 years, and he has the ability and the mandate to do whatever he pleases. This should send shockwaves to every government in the world. Mike, it probably is. He says, make no mistake, he's here for himself and whatever he believes will better America. And rather than bicker amongst ourselves, we need to prepare. We need to prepare by dropping our false pretenses of what we think the world is versus what it really is. He says, I believe Trump was elected because many people are hurting, and they're hurting in ways that many of us are not aware of. I think that's a great observation, Mike. He says, so that rather than write people off as racist or misogynist or heartless, recognize we've failed each other. For far too long, many of us have forgotten what empathy is, and now is the time to show some. If we don't, we'll continue to live in a world of isolation, filled with misinformation, gaslighting, and anger. He says, all my best to my fellow Real Talkers. Take care of each other. That from Mike in Calgary. That's a great email. But he's right though. I've got, I've like my personal text messages. I'm not going to read them today, but there's some group chats that I'm in, and the chats are split. Like there's people in there that are cheering the result, and there's people that are mortified. People that are, talking about how, like this is a tough morning for them, and it's going to be a tough road to hoe. So it doesn't make, the people that can recognize that are even celebrating a Trump win. That doesn't make some of my personal friends evil. I can't personally understand like what the fuck they see in Donald Trump. Obviously that's not the choice that I would make personally. But I like the spirit of Mike's email where he says people are hurting. And I think the Canadians would be well served to recognize as well. Like you look at election results that you either like or don't like. Mm-hmm. And it's been interesting as we've kept an eye on election results in provincial elections. New Brunswick, the Conservatives get whooped. Mm-hmm. In BC, the Conservatives rise up and almost win. Mm-hmm. In Saskatchewan, the Conservatives take a bit of a spanking but survive. Obviously, in Alberta, pretty interesting dueling storylines. Mm-hmm. Danielle Smith with the in-person votes at her AGM, strong support. But then you got Naheed Nenshi with really strong support with his NDP leadership vote as well. So what's Alberta going to do? But you could suggest that the Conservatives are trending up in Alberta and that the NDP has their work cut out for them. And then federally speaking, over the next year, it'd be interesting to see. You pulled a couple of comments from conservative, or rather, at least one conservative, Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, on the Trump election win, and she had this to say, on behalf of the government of Alberta, congratulating President-elect Trump. Vice President-elect J.D. Vance on the victory. Alberta and the United States have a long-standing trading partnership. There she goes and talks about strengthening the economies.
Yeah.
So that's obviously number one on her radar, and she's got her work cut out for her there. And then the Prime Minister as well, Justin Trudeau, a diplomat as he has to be here, and he'll have his hands full, as will Pierre Poilievre if he beats him a year from now. Basically congratulating Donald Trump on being elected, says the friendship between Canada and the U.S. is the envy of the world. And he says, and I know that the president and I, says Trudeau, will work together to create more opportunity, prosperity, and of course he talks about security for both of those nations.
Yeah.
I guess he's kind of touching on, the Prime Minister is subtly, in a way, on where America needs Canada. You and I talked about the Joe Rogan interview where Trump talked a lot about Canadian water, and you have to think American security as well. In the context of that northern border and Trump making some big promises around border security. So.
I thought it was weird this morning that Pierre Poilievre hadn't congratulated Trump, but just a few moments ago. Congratulations to Donald Trump on his election as the 47th president of the United States. The U.S. is Canada's best friend, biggest trading partner, and I will work with the president to benefit both countries. My mission, save our jobs. We must axe taxes, bring home our paychecks, save our jobs, stand up for Canada. That from Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, he, this is, we're going to find out. We've been covering this. Talked to Shauna Fath, President, CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, about the economic implications of this. Quick Dick McDick joining us yesterday. That was a fun conversation. I love chatting with him. Kind of a no bullshit kind of a guy, a Saskatchewan farmer, a very successful YouTube personality and stand-up comedian. And Quick Dick just talking about how, Canadian ag producers and others can probably brace to feel the pain. I imagine there's probably, I saw some polling that was pretty interesting showing that Donald Trump, these were numbers out of September, actually had more support in Alberta than in the United States, generally speaking. So, which maybe not a surprise, because if you're including, popular support for Trump in areas like California and New York State and the like, it would be a little bit different. I mean, the entire West Coast is blue right now. Washington, Oregon as well. But obviously a lot of Trump supporters in Alberta and Saskatchewan, but a lot of them could be impacted by those policies. Now, they would fire back, to be fair, in a conversation over a beer by suggesting they would probably be equally hurt in their mind, in their estimation, by some policies that Kamala Harris was talking about, including stricter environmental regulations. Shauna Fath talked to us about that, too, in our most recent Eye on Alberta Business presented by the Alberta Chambers. But now Canadians and the rest of the world kind of stands back and waits until
we got a brace here.
Trump will be inaugurated again, and then I would imagine will be pretty aggressive when he gets started with those appointments and that legislation.
I think both candidates, and now the president, Trump and Kamala Harris, they both had things where we were like, this won't be good for Canada. So in the next few weeks, he says, in the first week, tariffs are going to come up. I'm going to end the wars. I'm going to do all this stuff. We'll have to see what actually happens. Trump likes to do a lot of golfing. And again, this is a weird presidency to be reelected with a 4-year gap in the middle. It's so weird because when someone gets elected, like you almost say that Trump's economy kind of was built off of Obama's, because you kind of trail off the previous president, right? It takes you a while to affect things.
If it sucks, you blame the previous.
But you know what I mean?
If it's booming, it's your win.
You don't make a few changes and then immediately the economy changes. You could also say that Biden kind of trailed off of Trump's, or Biden kind of trails off the previous president, and as well, Trump, when he was elected, did the same thing. And now maybe Trump coming back, he's going to see some fallout from Biden's economy. But I want to say one thing before we get out of here. Trump had a really good team behind him this time. And I'm not talking about Republicans. I'm not even talking about his staffers. I'm talking about the guys, we've been talking about all week. Elon Musk, Joe Rogan. Seeing Dana White up there on stage last night was like watching. I was like, this is like reality TV. But those guys really got out there and were like the face for him when he wasn't doing interviews. The Joe Rogan podcast appearance, all these things really helped Trump with the mail vote, with, oh my gosh, we're seeing like Gen X and Gen Z voting for Trump. So like those guys on the team really push Trump to the forefront. RFK. But other than RFK, who we know is going to have some say in the White House, I hope he kind of like, I know he's going to be working with Elon Musk closely, but I hope those guys kind of take a back seat. That's the one thing I hope for.
I don't think so.
That's the thing. Like, if those guys are pushing to create policy and stuff like that in the White House, it's going to be pretty scary.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, obviously, smart guy, building rockets, all that's amazing. But, when you have RFK running health and wellness now, I mean, and Dana White gets up on stage and said, this is karma. Well, don't speak too soon. Because when you have a guy like RFK, taking care of healthcare, things could go really bad really quickly, and karma might bite you in the ass, right?
Yeah, I appreciated Dr. Melanee Thomas's take on Dana White invoking the word karma. I thought that was a smart take on hers. Want to mention that Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has congratulated Donald Trump on what he describes as an impressive election victory. I mean, what's he gonna do? Yeah. He says, "I recall our great meeting." There was a really interesting interaction. The body language in that meeting, if people can find it on YouTube. But he says, "I recall our great meeting with President Trump back in September. We discussed in detail the Ukraine-U.S. strategic partnership, the victory plan, and ways to put an end to Russian aggression against Ukraine." Says he appreciates Trump's commitment to peace through strength approach in global affairs. Says, "I hope we can put it in action together." Says, "We look forward to an era of a strong U.S. under President Trump's decisive leadership, and we rely on bipartisan support for Ukraine and the U.S., looking for mutually beneficial political and economic cooperation." He says, "Ukraine, one of Europe's strongest military powers, is committed to ensuring long-term peace and security. I'm looking forward to personally congratulating President Trump." Who gets the first meeting there out of those two? Is it Zelensky or Putin? That'll say a lot.
I think it's probably Putin. And here's the thing, like, I'm excited if he can end wars, if he can do it all. But a chilling thing our last guest said, Brian, was, that he may go to Netanyahu. That was the one that really scared me, and just say, get it over with and get it over with quick. That does not give me a good feeling in the pit of my stomach.
I thought the ambassador was smart talking about Iran. That's the one that people will have circled.
We're all talking about that too. I'll leave you with this before I think we're going to get out of here soon. This is another chilling tweet last night that immediately got like 1 million likes from Elon Musk.
What does it say?
"You are the media now."
Yeah. There's a lot of commentary in our live chat on the media and how mainstream media got it wrong, and I mean, a lot of people. I mean, if you actually look at like election predictions and pundits, I mean, the track record's tough. It's tough to predict elections, but
like, how often is the Associated Press wrong? Even they were saying it was going to be close, and it was not.
Justin says, "What baffles me the most is how many people, how many women, people of color, how many working class people actually think that Trump is an ally." Horse Lake Ranch says Trump's going to open pipeline and drilling areas. Last time Trump was in office, you could buy diesel for 33 cents a liter. If you could buy a truckload, 33 cents a liter? What is it now?
That's crazy.
I don't know if that's even true. But
he's got to.
Horse Lake Ranch probably buys more diesel than I do. So there you go. Erica has been in the chat saying, small populations spread across massive areas. Everything's more expensive to produce and transport. A lot of you getting into sort of what you're keeping an eye on economically here. Peaches is critical of our guest lineup. Big surprise that we had Canadian university professors on. Won't apologize. Had an ambassador on through the Obama. Okay, dude, we had a U.S. ambassador on the show. Fuck off. Peaches keeps coming back, though. Can't stand me, but keeps coming back, and I appreciate that. How about this? Cactus Sheriff says this is expecting a massive societal shift. Says this started with the post-war era, though it'll take generations to shift back. I mean, I don't know. This is very interesting to see. Like, this is like the Democrats right now have to be like, this is like, I don't know why I talk in sports metaphors, but it's like. It's like when the Edmonton Oilers in the Stanley Cup final, although this is worse. I mean, the better comparison is when they lost the cup. But you remember that feeling, the whole fan base, when they got like the two best players in the world, and then all of a sudden they're down -3. They're all of a sudden down 3-0 to Florida, and everyone's just sitting there like with their chins dropped and their jaws on the floor. Yeah. I mean, it would have been like, there's better examples, but like this was not supposed to happen.
No.
In the sense that I'm not necessarily even just talking about the loss. I'm talking about getting whooped. And
you said it on the show the other day. Scoreboard.
Yeah.
If you look at this in terms of states and it was a football game, scores, and one team has 30-odd points and the other team is in single digits, you immediately think, we've got to change the coaching team. We've got to change the quarterback. We've got to get some new players in. And that's immediately where the Democrats have to go today and start working on. Because here's the thing. Trump, again, with this, broken up presidency, I don't think Trump is immediately going to get to hard work. I think he's going to be the same Trump. I think he's going to go golfing. He's going to let his team handle it. But I think what his team will do is immediately start thinking, and it's not the Republicans. I have a fear that he might make this a family business. I mean, he knows he's only got 4 years. Who's going to take over for him? I could see Don Jr.
Oh, come on.
I'm serious. You say, oh, come on. What did we say back when Trump said he was going to run for president?
I mean, it's too early to talk this way, but I will just say.
But that's immediately what they'll start thinking about, because 4 years is a short time, and who's going to take over after? Yeah. Who's going to raise the Trump mantle now that they have all this support, right?
I just think that there's something about Donald Trump, and here we are. Like, listen, I'll acknowledge that we're doing a whole show on how many people, Trump's critics, underestimated him. Maybe they overestimated the power of their own campaign. And so I don't want to come up and make a comment that would underestimate the brand again. But I will just say Don Jr. can't carry his dad's gym shoes.
I don't know.
Well, I do know based on what I see,
well,
and I just can't imagine. But you're right. I mean, like you know, this could pass down some sort of.
Very popular on X. He's very popular on Twitter. He's very popular with the base.
I'm going to say his
part
daughter.
Of the family.
His daughter's more likely to
Ivanka
be president
too,
next than his
there
son.
You go. Yeah.
Right. I think that she's more likely to be next president than his son. But the Democrats are going to have to figure something out here. Like
they've got to go to the drawing board today.
This is a start from scratch type approach.
Oh yeah.
And I hate to. I mean, it's like, you know, two dudes saying this, but people say America's not ready for a woman president. Like, I don't know. You just look at, you know, it's like when these two choices were stacked up against one another. If you didn't have names on them, if it was just a hypothetical, and you said we're gonna, you know, put a candidate with like 34 felony convictions. There's a guy in the chat. I don't remember who it was.
Charges.
Somebody said their buddy runs a forklift company down in the States, and the Trump campaign rented forklifts off them and never paid for them. Like, you know, whether that's true or not, there's a long history of
with
Trump
his university
screwing
thing.
over.
Like,
So let's just say you have a candidate that's like done this and that and this and that and this and that.
He's impenetrable to it.
And then you have another that's been like attorney general of one of the biggest states in the country and vice president. And you go, well, yeah, it should be that person. It should be the person without all the felony convictions. But it's not. As a matter of fact, it's the other person that won in a landslide.
One last scary thing. You're saying guy 100 charges, convicted felon, you know, pretty much we know he started a university, it was fraud, sexual assault allegations, you know, obviously not 100% proven and guilty in court. But a man like that who goes through all that and also 2 assassination attempts.
Yeah.
One which was very close.
Yeah.
How empowered do you think someone like that feels right now? That's the other thing that scares me. I mean, there's nothing he could do. There's nothing he could say. There's no amendment he could bring. There's no bill he could get passed through. There's nothing he could do to not feel like he's invincible. And that's a little scary.
Yeah, you have to assume that well, whatever. Not going to say it. I'm just going to say you have to assume that they'll have tighter security around Donald Trump than any American president has ever had.
Are you kidding
right?
me? Are you
like
kidding
I just think, and you don't want to sort of like call something like this or speculate around things like assassination attempts, but I would just say you'll have and I don't mean the word disrespectfully, but you'll have a desperate element of the American population now that will be filled with despair and anger and all of the things like there are election losses where, you know, like your leader loses, right? Like, you know, I'm not comparing the American election to like an Alberta election, for example, where, you know, much of our audience in Western Canada, but like, you know, you really liked Rachel Notley and you really believed in the NDP and you know, you feel like Danielle Smith is like a threat, you know, to your way of life or a threat to your province or what have you. You feel very strongly about it, you know, and so you know, your team loses and it sucks. Right. Or, you know, maybe you were like a big Harper supporter and you felt like, you know, Prime Minister Harper really represented the country well. And then this drama teacher, comes up from third place and past Thomas Mulcair and Justin Trudeau. Are you kidding me? Justin Trudeau's going to be that, and you can't handle it. And you've just been disgusted over the past 10 years with the socks and the hair, and you've told everybody about it, and you fly the fuck Trudeau flag on your truck and all that kind of stuff. Like, I get it. Like, election losses stick with people and they torment them, and you can't stand to see the other person in office. But I feel like for people in the United States and for other people around the world, this feels like even more than that, because they don't necessarily see they don't see a way out.
No.
They're right now looking at his promises of, people are expecting in more serious sort of type scenarios, catastrophic rollbacks of rights. I mean, who was it that it was Mike that wrote in his email, like a Trump-loaded Supreme Court, like Congress, the Senate, like the presidential seal, the stamp. People are talking about his promise on mass deportations, and there are cities in the United States, largely run by Democrats, where Trump has threatened to use presidential powers to seize control, using the U.S. military of those cities to carry out these mass deportations.
Oh yeah,
that's the type of scenario as that unfolds. To bring this down to the safety and bring it back to the security of the United States president, where some people just will do everything that they could possibly imagine to prevent that from happening.
Oh, 100%.
And I do not wish to see it.
No.
You hope that, I saw somebody lightheartedly tweet last night that in light of January 6th, when Trump wins, Democrats have the opportunity to do the funniest thing imaginable, suggesting a Democratic version of January 6th, just in a dumb, joking kind of a way. You obviously hope to see zero violence, obviously, but I am concerned about what could happen in the United States. I am concerned about a Trump base that could become emboldened, and they won. Like, they won.
Yeah.
Fair and square. Funny that I don't think you'll see any Trump supporters questioning the validity of the U.S. election right now.
Oh, that's the first thing I thought
all
when
of a sudden
he came up to
trusts
speak. He was laying the groundwork for it with a few things in Pennsylvania, saying, Philadelphia, we're seeing lots of cheating, sending the authorities, etc. But man, all these things you're talking about, it's just it's very ominous. I don't know if you want to end on it, but we still have that Project 25
You keep
clip.
saying end. I'm not ending the show.
Well, sorry.
So I've got
it's
Greg.
getting close to 10, but you do have that Project 25 clip if you want to play it.
Well, why don't we go to that? Well, let's roll that right now.
Project 2025 is rooted in Christian nationalism. We all know that Donald Trump is not religious. I doubt he's ever opened a Bible. But Trump is surrounded by religious extremists. As long as they give him power, he'll give them their policies, just like he did when he overturned Roe v. Wade. The man who is rumored to be chief of staff in a second Trump administration is a self-proclaimed Christian nationalist. In Project 2025, they're already planning to ban abortion nationwide, ban IVF, ban contraception. They're even talking about banning what they call recreational sex. In my view, this is the Christian Taliban. They are perverting my Christian faith and subverting our American democracy. For those in blue states, Project 2025 is theoretical. But for those of us living in red states, Project 2025 is already here. I know what's coming because I see it every day at the Texas Capitol. Banning books, banning abortion, forcing every teacher to display the 10 Commandments, replacing school counselors with untrained, unsupervised religious chaplains, defunding public schools to subsidize private Christian schools, teaching Bible stories in our state curriculum as historical fact. We are sleepwalking toward theocracy in this country, and we must all act with the urgency that this moment demands.
That's James Talarico. He's a born-again Christian and a Texas state representative. For those of you on the podcast, I don't think this matters, but he's sitting there delivering that wearing his big black cowboy boots. So that was a real Texas presence. Commentary on the American president. That's James Talarico. I saw Greg in our chat that says he's responding to my comments. He says, "Sorry, Kamala's qualifications are what? How about this? Like, not a convicted felon." That's the point I'm making. I'm not I'm not out here campaigning. I mean, what's done is done. But I'm just saying,
the only woman to serve 3 branches of government.
Can you imagine?
That alone is like,
I mean, and
do that as a woman is it's fucking crazy.
Yeah,
So-
it's. I mean, I just think like there's a certain element, like just in plain language, there's just a certain type of person. I'm one of them that just like can't really wrap their mind around how somebody with Trump's track record can win. But then there are clearly, based on last night, at least 71.4 million people in the United States that could explain exactly how that happens. And that's something that, like, to be honest, and I think this is maybe one of the values of a talk show and of communities that gather together to talk, is that, like, sometimes a reality establishes itself, and then you got to just figure it out by talking about it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear. I want to hear from I guarantee that there will be Americans that find this program. You can send us an email if you voted for Trump. I'd love to hear why. Talk@ryanjespersen.com. If you're one of those in Western Canada or across the country that's would identify as a Canadian conservative but a big Trump supporter, maybe why? What is it like? What are the rest of us missing when we just sort of can't wrap our minds around it? When you can't figure out how somebody with 34 felony convictions could assume office of the president, the highest office in the land, the most powerful office in the world.
And
how does it happen?
This isn't just like because, I'm watching CNN last night. I'm going back to Fox News. I'm watching every angle. And, CNN, MSNBC are saying, this is people who are upset that, the cost of cereal in the States is $9 a box and eggs are too much and blah, blah, blah. There's got to be more than that, Ryan. This isn't just the economy. This isn't just immigration. This isn't just, the future of energy. It's all those things wrapped into one with a tinfoil ball around it that is just impenetrable of A, the MAGA base, but B, and I'll just say it, and I'm not saying 71, 72 million people in America are bigots and bullies and are full of hate. But there is a lot of negative energy balled up in that as well, right?
Yeah, fair. We've got Scott pointing out he wants to talk about which political leaders have cost them more. He says Trudeau's been charging my brother. I don't know what your brother does for work, Scott, but he says Trudeau's been charging his brother $2,000 a month for an ineffective carbon tax. Maybe he works in ag. Says while we increase fossil fuel exports, he says, I hate to see that. You can let us know what you think. Ken suggests people get off all social media, pay attention to economic news, learn instead of being influenced by social media algorithms and addiction. I mean, the Elon Musk factor, I don't think can be overstated here. I do think that it's very significant. And like you said, his tweet, "You are the media now." Pretty interesting stuff. Alberta Girl says Project 2025 is the blueprint. Grateful that we played that clip. Others are saying that the U.S. dodged a bullet last night. Maybe. I don't think so, but maybe you could maybe you can change my mind. Maybe Donald Trump, I mean, he's promising what's good for America. That's what he says. It kind of was just a wild acceptance speech, and like you said, I think your assessment. I think that he did come across as a bit tired, but
he's exhausted.
At least I'm still. Yeah. I'll be honest. I disagree with.
There's no dancing last night.
I disagree with Dr. Thomas, Melanee Thomas, who joined us, in the sense that she kind of, in her mind, and that's fine. That's her opinion. Kind of gives Kamala a pass for not speaking last night. I think that's bonkers.
Bad move.
I think it's. I just think it's bad optics. I think it's disrespectful. Yeah. I think whether or not you know the result, show your face.
She could have said everything that guy said. She could have. Obviously, it was. They're in the back room. This is what you're gonna go. You're gonna go say this paragraph. It's gonna be quick. You're gonna say, "Go Kamala, go HQ." You're gonna walk off. She could have come out and said the same thing, and everyone would have been like, "Great." Leave her to her own devices. We're still counting votes. There would have been way more. I mean, you heard the tone of the crowd when that guy came out. There wasn't you could hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
If Kamala had to come out, there would have been some energy. There would have been something. But
well, I think also because he was still trying to sort of help everybody. He was like, we're still counting votes. We're still, it's your team's down 5-1 with a minute left. All we need is no. Everybody knows.
And the electoral votes weren't in, but CNN. You talk about CNN and people painting them as bad. They had an incredible in-depth map where they kept going in on a state, and then they could go into a county, and then they narrowed down all the places where Trump was winning, and the numbers. I mean, you texted me. I'll just pull back the curtain. You texted me early and said these numbers are not good, right?
That was at like 7:30. That was like 7 o'clock.
I agree.
And listen, Greg's onto something here too. Greg, and I don't know anything about Greg's politics in our live chat, but he says, don't hate people for changing their minds. try to understand why they did.
Well, that's what we're trying to do.
And Greg throws a bullseye with that comment. And Sharon says this is what happens when you put religion in our politics. I don't know. I guess obviously, we heard from James Talarico there, the Texas state representative. But I certainly wouldn't consider Trump to be a religious person.
I was just going to say
but I do think that
the
evangelical but again, like the evangelical support of Trump is a fascinating thing, and Jared Yates Sexton has written about that, and obviously many people have, and it's a fascinating thing. And quite frankly, having grown up in the Christian faith, I don't understand how Bible-believing Christians could support Donald Trump. But I digress. I would just say that there's so much more to his win than that.
Way more.
Like there's so much more to his win than religion in politics.
If religion was in politics and that was the only deciding factor, Mitt Romney would have won. You know what I mean? Like it's
not a bad point.
It has nothing to do with that. I mean, I would argue that half of MAGA base isn't even religious. Like they're just, a lot of it is hype. A lot of it is like, man, he's almost like, he's like an avatar out there. He's like a celebrity. I like how you compared him to Reagan. I think he has the same draw. How he,
Trump?
He's almost like an
times
actor.
10 though.
Yeah,
times 10.
Yeah.
Like Ronald Reagan was just like, did a good job, I guess, as governor of California, and had people, believe in Reaganomics, and was a compelling guy and a popular guy.
Definitely had a path.
The Reagan,
right?
Margaret Thatcher thing was happening, and obviously there was those factors, but Trump is like his own thing.
He's
like
a
Trump,
tornado.
Ronald Reagan at least was a Republican. Like Donald Trump is like, he outlines in the Rogan interview how he it probably, may have been a better fit for him to run as an independent, but he didn't see that as a path to power because you don't have the House of the Senate, which is obviously astute. But Trump is Trump. Like the party is Trump. The movement is MAGA. It's not like
100%.
Here's the Republican here's the Republican nominee. Technically he is that, but he's so much more than that.
I bet he wishes he had run as an independent now, because he would have won twice as an independent. Speaking of independents, you saw Virginia last night. That was crazy. Like Kamala Harris would have won Virginia, would have swung a state if it hadn't been for 20% of the vote for the Green Party there. That was absolutely insane. I don't know what those people were voting for.
Love seeing CCMA nominee, a great friend of the show, JJ Shiplet, in the live chat. Says, Jespo, quick question. Could Bible-believing Christians support Harris? I guess why not? I guess anybody can support whoever they want. But my point is just to say, there's, I don't know, growing up in the evangelical church, there just weren't a lot of, convicted rapists up behind the pulpit. There weren't a lot of people talking about grabbing women by the pussy and dropping C-bombs, and there weren't a lot of frauds and cheats. Well, actually there probably were some frauds and cheats up there, but I digress. So that's just my point. I'm just saying the evangelical Christian movement in the United States in particular, it just has sort of established itself with an underlying element of hypocrisy, and that's a fact. And I don't think that I don't need to work too hard to argue that out. It's just the court convictions kind of speak for themselves. Trump's behavior kind of speaks for itself. The comments he makes behind, talking about, he stopped himself the other day talking about Kamala Harris. This was 1 day before the election. And he goes, she's a real bitch. And then he goes to call her a bitch. And then he's like, he goes, I want to say it, but I'm not going to say it. And I'm just
that was on the golf course too.
If you grew up in the church, that's just a weird thing to cheer for.
But
don't you agree?
They're very forgiving. Look at all the TV evangelists and guys who have been through all those controversies. We could name a million of them. Maybe 10 right now. But they've all been forgiven, right? And that's a big part of the evangelical thing is, forgiveness and all that stuff. But yeah, it's kind of weird because you can tell Trump isn't religious. And also, this is a guy who donated to Hillary Clinton and the Clintons, and he was a Democrat before, right? He just chose Republican because that was his market.
And it was a smart move for him. He saw an opportunity to kind of swoop in and become that party's nominee for president, which he did, and then he served that party as president, and then obviously saw that the party didn't sort of have a star coming up, and and he saw opportunity. He really never really stopped campaigning ever.
No,
it was always a very real outcome that Trump could seek the presidency again.
Do you think he stops now? Do you think he still does these rallies? And
I don't know. He said last night, he said something like 900 rallies. He said, but that was all to get us to this point. He said, it's hard to believe that I've attended my last rally. Obviously there'll be rallies as presidents make appearances and glean support for the party and fundraise and that sort of a thing. Some talk about whether or not, American presidents can serve a maximum of 2 terms. And some folks are wondering, could Trump try to change that? Then others, and then I've seen some folks saying that they sure hope so because Obama would be licking his chops.
Well, that's why I bring up.
Maybe that's the presidential campaign we all need to see 4 years from now. Trump will be sort of stumbling around like Biden was by that point.
So this is the UFC matchup
Trump
we've been waiting
v.
for.
Obama.
That'd be absolutely insane. But I'll bring it up again. I think I have a feeling, and I think he's going to try and make it a family business. I think you're right about Ivanka. I could see Don Jr. as well if they don't like a female. Like I don't see Trump endorsing one of these Republicans that party chooses. Because like I said, he's an outlier. He's not really, he's in the Republican Party, but he's his own thing. So I could really see them making this a family business. And
Alicia is in the live chat, says it's a dark day for world politics. How are we supposed to look our children square in the face and explain to them how millions of adults have failed them? Horse Lake Ranch says everybody doesn't have to have the same religious beliefs. Religion is a wide spectrum these days. You're not wrong. You're not wrong about that at all. Not wrong about that in the least. I saw how about this from Acute Awareness? It says Trump is an opportunist and a demagogue, so let's work with him and make this work for Canada.
Thank you for saying something positive. And I agree. I didn't wake up today and say, oh, my God, my life is going to suck for the next 4 years, or I'm going to go out and try and get, because obviously, we try to keep some of our political opinions, behind us. But obviously, I wanted, Kamala Harris to win. But let's try to get the best out of this. I wish, I hope Trump ends the wars. I hope he fixes the economy. I do not hope he puts tariffs on us. I hope I hope him and Elon Musk create some new form of energy and put Starlink across the globe and we all get free internet. That would be great.
Yeah.
But is it going to happen?
It won't be
know
free.
what I mean?
It's not going to be free. Nothing that they're going to do is
going
to be
free.
free.
It probably won't work in Alberta. I always see, I'll be out at, the nightclubs or a wedding and someone will say, I love Trump. I love Elon Musk. He's going to give us all Starlink and internet. I'm like, if you think those little satellites are going to work in Alberta in -30 with dumping snow, you're crazy.
Tobias says, quit crying, losers. It was the right choice for Trump
We're
to
not
win.
crying.
Smelly Bulldog says, I know several Americans who voted for Trump simply because they've got frustration toward a system that doesn't work for them. They want him to tear it down to affect change. Smelly Bulldog, that's a great comment. It's a smart comment, 100%. Others are saying, Blue Nona says expect tariffs on Canadian oil. I think the tariffs are a reality. Plain Power says, we're not getting internet for free. That's not happening.
I didn't mean that, but Starlink is very competitively priced compared to like I won't say who I'm with right now, but I'm paying a shitload for fast internet.
Everybody is. Everybody in Canada is getting screwed on. I just about said telecom.
Might as well
what's
be
the
free.
modern word? Whatever we're doing for phone and internet, Canadians are getting screwed. I want to give a shout out to Alberta Ganger in our super chat, $5. Thank you for the Real Talk Beer Fridge. You say at least after this term, Trump can go off into the sunset. The post-Trump Republican Party will be a need to watch, which will be interesting. Post-Trump Republican Party, yeah, no kidding. How about a post-Biden Democratic Party? Also going to be interesting to watch. And also, we're just at the beginning. He's not even inaugurated yet. There's a world ahead of us over the next 4 years. We'll get to more of your comments in a second. This is good, man.
How
People
bad
gathering and talking. But real quick, I want to put this, the University of Alberta, it's important that we mention this, is putting out the call right now for nominations for the University of Alberta Alumni Awards. And we know that many of you are proud U of A alum or know someone that's making a real impact in the world around them. The impact of the U of A's alumni is felt around the world. They're leaders, they're innovators, they're change makers. Have any inspired you? We're looking for those change makers, those world shapers, those status quo breakers, those who have redefined excellence and deserve recognition. The U of A hands out alumni awards in 5 different categories: professional excellence, university service, emerging leadership, provincial and national influence, and groundbreaking innovation. And we know that there's been a ton of that. Visit uab.ca/nominate to shine a light on an outstanding achiever That starts with you, an outstanding nominator. The Alumni Awards nominations are now open, and we invite you to do so. That's uab.ca/nominate. We also announced this week how proud we are at Real Talk to be partnering up with UCAN Youth Services. They're doing amazing work based out of Edmonton, a charitable organization empowering youth. So they have the knowledge, support, and skills to remove themselves from at-risk lifestyles. They're assisting young people in transitioning into employment. They've got some amazing programs, or even back into education. Their mission is to help young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. Check out their Road to Work program. That's one aimed at 18 to 25-year-olds. Successful candidates start at a $15 an hour wage, and they can work their way up, giving them the tools needed to enter construction, road building, and traffic safety industries. That is just one example of many, and we're going to be telling you all about UCAN Youth Services over the months to come. And we wanted to give a shout out as well to our friends at Complete Care Restoration. They are working hard around the clock. They've got teams deployed in many different communities impacted by water damage, fire damage, even individual properties, homes, businesses that have experienced sewer backups, mold issues. If this is you, look no further than Complete Care Restoration. They've got a dedicated team of certified professionals. Their emergency services 24/7 ensure your property is restored quickly and efficiently, and they work directly with insurance companies to simplify that claims process for you so you don't have to worry about it. You can focus on what matters the most. They restore properties and rebuild peace of mind at Complete Care Restoration.
Yeah, Peach is saying in here, what are you talking about, Starlink? I own one. It works great. I'm not saying it doesn't work. What I'm saying is I've seen the numbers and tests in the winter, and you can't tell me that the speed of fiber is not as good or way better than Starlink in the winter.
I don't know anything about it.
So Starlink is a satellite, basically. So it has to have, first of all, it has to have a clear line of sight to go up to space, right? So we're talking about dumping snow in Alberta. We're talking about freezing cold temperatures. It does okay in them.
So it's kind of like solar.
But when we're talking minus 30, also it melts snow. It heats itself up to melt snow. But I mean, that only works to a point. It can't get out of like 3 feet of powder. You know what I mean? So,
right.
And I've seen some of the tests. I mean, yeah, it works great. But like here in Alberta, we've got cold, snowy weather 5, 6, 7 months of the year. So
I do think, I mean, it's going to be a game changer when it comes to access for remote communities, countries.
That's exactly
like developing
what it's great
countries,
for.
the so-called third world, as they say.
But then you've got Russia using it illegally now, so there's a lot of like exclamation points.
But it's also allowed Ukrainian troops to operate their drones.
Exactly. There's pros and cons back and forth. What I was going to ask before we went to break was how bad did Biden hurt Kamala? Or here's the flip side. Should we have just stuck with Biden, as crazy as it sounds?
Yeah.
If he had pulled the same numbers, I mean, there'd be a Democrat victory last night, right? So should Biden have dropped out earlier? Would that have helped? All these questions were going through my mind as I saw the numbers roll in.
I don't know if I believe that, because I think that did
he stay in there too long?
I don't know. Like when he I don't think that, I mean, I think Kamala, nobody was talking about Joe Biden last night. Mm-hmm. Trump didn't reference Joe Biden. He wasn't really, I mean, there was the odd Sleepy Joe reference, but it was for obvious reasons.
The guy's still the president.
They turned. So I know. It's like I feel
he doesn't exist.
It's like I almost feel bad for him. Yeah, it's like nobody even. I saw him make an appearance the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, he's still president of the United States. It's just so weird. But I don't get the personal. This is my personal opinion. I don't think him sticking around to when he stuck around hurt Kamala, because if anything, I think you saw people rallying around her, like, and basically the fundraising that her team accomplished, the social media strategy they rolled out, the videos, the billboard campaigns, everything was like slapping. Like it was really, she raised $1 billion, more than $1 billion. Like I don't think they ran out of time. Mm-hmm. I think that they just, I don't think that the campaign focused on the right things. Obviously they didn't reach Americans where they're at. This wasn't even like a thing where they like lost a nail biter and like they just lost, Pennsylvania and lost the election. It's like they lost basically everywhere except for the guaranteed win states. They lost among the election demographics that they were supposed to win, and for that reason, Donald Trump will be sworn in again as president, as the 47th president of the United States. We invite you to let us know. Leave a comment on this if this is the first time that you've ever checked out Real Talk. We appreciate your subscription on YouTube or wherever you found us, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or somewhere else. And you can send us an email anytime to talk@ryanjespersen.com. I suspect that this week's edition of The Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, is going to be a banger. These are all emails to talk@ryanjespersen.com. If you have a hot take, you need to get something off your chest, you know what to do. Send us an email with The Flamethrower in the subject line, and you could hear that read on a very special episode of the show that's coming up on Friday, leading up to Remembrance Day. Coming up on Thursday's Real Talk, that's going to be the 7th of November. That's the next one we're going to produce. We're going to sit down in studio with Kevin Van Tighem, the former superintendent of Banff National Park and an outspoken advocate basically for environmental issues across the country. He's got some great insights on what's happening right now and a brand new book. We rarely get a chance to sit down with him at length and really get into it. It's going to be a nice change of pace from all the political talk, though I suspect there'll be some politics playing a part of it. We hope you'll join us then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human resources Lena Shepard. Website design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Kandola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.